A theoretical physicist created the deadliest weapon in the history of mankind. Will the weapon be used for mass destruction, or will it prevail for peace in this world? Let's find out in today's recap of the 2023 documentary film titled Oppenheimer. But before we delve into the storyline, please like and subscribe for more recaps. Have a great day. The film opens with Robert Oppenheimer envisioning an atomic explosion. Presently, he finds himself at a 1954 security hearing, tasked with determining whether he betrayed classified information to the Nazis and Soviets. Robert argues that his entire life should be considered in assessing the case. In 1924, a young Oppenheimer begins studying physics at Cambridge. While doing a lab experiment, he spills some chemicals, and his professor tells him to redo the work. Even though he has to go to Niels Bohr's lecture, the professor insists he completes the task. After everyone leaves, Robert quickly stabs an apple with potassium cyanide on the table, and then goes to Bohr's lecture. In the lecture hall, he's the only one asking questions to Niels Bohr. However, the next day, he comes to his senses and rushes to the classroom to retrieve the apple injected with potassium cyanide. There, he meets Bohr and prevents him from eating the poisoned apple. Bohr expresses his admiration for Oppenheimer's knowledge of atomic structure and advises him to change universities to one that will help him fulfill his potential. He suggests Göttingen, where Oppenheimer can study under the supervision of scientist Max Born. Following Bohr's advice, Oppenheimer enrolls at the University of Göttingen, immersing himself in quantum physics and preparing to write his dissertation. Advancing to 1959, a Senate meeting is convened to assess Louis Strauss for the position of Secretary of Commerce. Strauss faces questioning about Oppenheimer, revealing a negative perspective and making allegations about Oppenheimer's connections to communist circles. Adding to this, he discloses a personal animosity that dates back to 1947 when they first crossed paths. Despite holding the position of the head of the U.S. Atomic Energy Commission, Strauss extends an offer to Oppenheimer to join Princeton University, a proposal that Oppenheimer declines. Observing Albert Einstein near the lake, Oppenheimer approaches him with a condescending attitude towards Strauss. They briefly talk, and Einstein walks away, paying no attention to Strauss. Strauss assumes Oppenheimer said something derogatory about him, and he speculates about their conversation. The details of Oppenheimer's discussion with Einstein will be revealed at the end of our recap, so stay tuned. In 1927, after completing his studies in Göttingen, Robert goes to give a lecture at Leiden University in Holland, where he encounters fellow physicist Isidor Rabi. Rabi is impressed by Oppenheimer's knowledge of molecules, and they quickly become friends. Rabi suggests that Oppenheimer attend a lecture by the renowned German physicist Heisenberg. They both head to Heisenberg's lecture, and after its conclusion, Oppenheimer meets Heisenberg. Heisenberg praises Robert's scientific work and proposes collaboration on research, but Oppenheimer declines, stating his plans to return to the United States. Robert then moves to Berkeley, where he meets Dr. Lawrence, a practical physicist who values hands-on work over mere theories. In 1936, Oppenheimer starts teaching at Berkeley, initially with only one student. However, through word of mouth, the number of students grows rapidly. Fast forward to 1959, during the hearing, Strauss informs that the FBI began collecting a dossier on Oppenheimer as soon as he returned to the US due to his left-wing political views. In 1939, Robert attends a meeting of the Communist Party, where he encounters Chevalier, a German physicist, and Jean Tatlock. Jean is impressed by Robert's knowledge, and they develop a close relationship. However, their affair encounters challenges due to Jean's constant mood swings. The difficulties in their relationship are heightened by news from the world of science that the Germans have successfully split the uranium atom. Robert reflects on the implications, realizing that if successful, this could lead to a chain reaction that could be utilized in a bomb. One night, Robert goes to pick up Jean for a date and presents her with flowers. However, due to her mental health issues, she throws the flowers. Later that night, Robert goes to the scientist union named Facet and delivers an impressive speech. Some days after Robert's article is published, the scientists begin to celebrate. However, their celebrations are short-lived, as news breaks that Hitler has invaded Poland, marking the start of World War II. During a regular Communist Party meeting, Robert meets Catherine, and they become romantically involved. Catherine decides to leave her husband and marries Robert. Despite his marriage, Robert continues to spend time with Jean. He informs Jean about his marriage to another woman and tells her that they are not suited for each other. However, he assures Jean that he will help her whenever she needs assistance. Fast forward to 1954, during the hearing of his case, Oppenheimer admits that the neutrality of the communists at the beginning of the war greatly undermined his trust in them. He makes this statement even though Catherine was a member of their party. In 1942, at the university, Oppenheimer meets General Groves, who invites him to become the director of the Manhattan Project, aimed at building an atomic bomb. General Groves is concerned that the Nazis could develop such a devastating weapon, and they have a significant head start on its development. Robert argues that the US has only one chance to get ahead of Hitler and hopes that Hitler's anti-Semitism will prevent him from allowing Jewish scientists, such as Heisenberg, to develop the bomb. Oppenheimer suggests that scientists from other countries who fled Hitler's repression and are now in the US should be involved in the project. Although General Groves initially dislikes the idea, Oppenheimer convinces him that it is the only hope of winning the nuclear race. For the needs of the Manhattan Project, a separate city is being built in Los Alamos for scientists and their families. At the same time, Oppenheimer and Groves travel around the country, gathering the best scientists to work on building the atomic bomb. Some scientists, like Robbie, express disapproval of using their knowledge to create weapons of mass destruction. In response, Robert argues that they would rather build such a weapon than allow the Nazis to do so. Sometime later, at their first meeting, a serious problem with the calculations arises. Robert instructs the scientists to redo the calculations, and he personally goes to consult Einstein. There are concerns that the uncontrolled decay of uranium could trigger a chain reaction that would be unstoppable, leading to the destruction of the entire world. Robert asks Einstein to double-check the calculations, but Einstein clarifies that it is Robert's work, not his. Albert's only parting request is that if these calculations are correct, Robert should inform the Nazis so that neither side destroys the world. Back at Los Alamos, Robert is informed that the calculations have been double-checked and the probability of a man-made apocalypse is close to zero. A few months later, Chevalier hints to Robert that it would be a good idea to share their findings with the Soviet Union, but Robert refuses. This refusal is later reported at a hearing in 1954. The events of the movie jump forward to 1959, during the hearings on Strauss's nomination as Secretary of Commerce. The Senate announces that a certain scientist will be called to testify. Strauss fears what this scientist will say about him, and there is a belief among scientists that Strauss, who was the head of the US Atomic Energy Commission, is responsible for what happened to Oppenheimer in 1954. Events go back in time again to a meeting in Los Alamos, where scientists discuss the destructiveness of the atomic bomb. Edward Teller proposes the idea of a hydrogen bomb, much more powerful than the atomic bomb. However, they decide to shelve this idea for another time. In a flash forward to the Atomic Energy Commission meeting in 1949, after the events of Hiroshima and Nagasaki, they discuss the first nuclear bomb tests by the Soviet Union. Oppenheimer suggests negotiating with the Soviets to settle nuclear armament, but Strauss proposes building a hydrogen bomb to have an advantage over the Soviets. Oppenheimer disagrees with this approach. Back in 1943, General Groves reprimands Robert for traveling with another scientist to a different branch of the Manhattan Project. He demands that secrecy protocols be followed, with each employee knowing only what they are working on. Oppenheimer demands a security check from General Groves and states that he will not work until the security check is given. Groves reluctantly agrees. Fast forward to 1954, during the hearing, the general expresses his firm belief that despite repeated violations of security protocols, Oppenheimer did not pass information to the Soviets and is trustworthy. Oppenheimer's relationship with Jean is called into question, and in flashbacks it is revealed that he continued their affair. He confesses the affair to Catherine, who is present in the room, and she leaves angrily. The following witness, Colonel Posh, who was responsible for the secrecy of the Manhattan Project, is called in for questioning. The colonel reports that one day Oppenheimer tried to hint about a certain Soviet network of spies who offered to pass information to him through an intermediary. Posh wanted to know the name of this intermediary, but Robert refused, not wanting to cause trouble for Chevalier. However, a few months later, he did give a fake name to him. Flashback to 1944. At a Christmas party, Bohr arrives at Los Alamos, stranded in Europe due to the Nazi occupation. He gives the scientists advice and warns Oppenheimer that he is providing humanity with a weapon that could lead to their own destruction. Bohr then shares information about the project the Soviets are working on. All the scientists become relieved, knowing that the Soviets have not yet discovered the actual formula of the atomic bomb. At the same time, Robert is informed of Jean Tatlock's death. She had taken pills and drowned herself in the bathtub. This news triggers a nervous breakdown in Robert. He goes into the woods, where he is found by Catherine, who urges him to pull himself together. Quarrels begin in the team of scientists as Edward Teller continues to work on the hydrogen bomb, neglecting his duties. Despite the challenges, Oppenheimer somehow manages to convince Teller to join the project. In 1949, the Atomic Energy Commission discusses the feasibility of a hydrogen bomb. Oppenheimer suggests creating a commission to internationally regulate nuclear weapons instead of increasing their numbers. He argues that building such a bomb would force the Soviets to build their own. During the same meeting, Robert meets William Borden, who later writes a detailed report to the FBI, claiming that Oppenheimer sabotaged the creation of the hydrogen bomb, assisted by information from Oppenheimer's personal file given to him by ill-wishers from the military. Returning to 1945, scientists discuss Hitler's death and Germany's imminent surrender. Some scientists question whether the atomic bomb should be used anywhere other than a test site. Oppenheimer justifies the use of nuclear weapons against Japan, citing that the alternative, a naval landing, would likely cost more lives. The team prepares for the first test detonation of the atomic bomb, named Trinity, after 3 years of continuous work and a cost of $2 billion. On the day before the explosion, Robert goes up to the bomb himself to grasp the magnitude of what is to come. The test is scheduled for the early morning of July 16th. Oppenheimer and Groves spend a sleepless night in the bunker, fearing that the explosion could, in theory, destroy the entire world. The team equips themselves with sunglasses and welding glasses to witness the blast. The timer counts down the final seconds, ratcheting up the tension, and a blinding flash of light pierces the dark sky, turning night into day. Oppenheimer utters his famous quote, "And now I have become death, the destroyer of worlds." The test is a success, and an enthusiastic crowd congratulates Oppenheimer. Soon, the scientists build 2 more bombs and send them to the military. Robert begins to be tormented by moral dilemmas about using such a powerful weapon against humans. President Truman's speech about the nuclear bombing of Hiroshima and Nagasaki is broadcast on the radio, and initially, everyone rejoices as the war will soon be over. However, Oppenheimer begins to suffer from a guilty conscience due to the victims. He gives a fiery speech to the team, but at the same time, he imagines how the bomb will incinerate everyone. Robert becomes a global science star. His picture is printed on the cover of Time magazine, and he is even invited to a reception with the president. Truman initially congratulates him on developing the bomb, but when Oppenheimer mentions having blood on his hands, Truman gives him a handkerchief and tells him to wipe it off. Truman then banishes him and calls him a crybaby. Years later, during the hearing, it is revealed that after the war, Oppenheimer spent all his efforts to contain the US nuclear capability. This leads to a conflict of interest with Strauss, who uses his connections to repress Robert's loved ones. It becomes clear that it was Strauss who leaked Oppenheimer's dossier to Borden, and also arranged a closed hearing on Robert's case in an attempt to destroy his reputation. Robert is asked when his views on developing nuclear weapons changed, and he replies that it happened when he realized that the US would use any weapon they had. At the end of the hearing, the commission recognizes Robert Oppenheimer as loyal to the United States, but he is stripped of his security clearance and loses his political influence. Events shift to 1959 when former technician David Hill testifies against Strauss on behalf of the majority of scientists due to his actions against Oppenheimer. Hill reports that Strauss did not act out of concern for the safety of the country, but because of personal grievances. This includes a moment during another hearing when Oppenheimer called Strauss's ideas little more useful than a sandwich. As a consequence of his actions, Strauss is denied a ministerial nomination, and among those who rejected him is a young Senator John F. Kennedy. The events of the movie move one last time to 1947, to that fateful conversation of Robert with Einstein by the lake. Albert tells Robert that one day when they have punished him enough, They will invite him to the White House and give him an award, but it won't be for him. It will be for them. Einstein is about to leave, but Oppenheimer asks him if he remembers the day he feared starting a chain reaction that would destroy the entire world. Oppenheimer admits to Einstein that he was right. Although the atomic bomb didn't start a self-perpetuating nuclear chain reaction, it has indeed initiated a self-perpetuating cycle of hatred. This atomic bomb that they have created will eventually be the cause of the destruction of the world. And this is how the story ends here. I hope you all enjoyed it. If you were somehow a great physicist and were in the place of Oppenheimer, then what actions would you have taken? Would you have used your knowledge to build the atomic bomb or something else to save humanity? What moral questions and dilemmas do you have in your mind? Feel free to share your thoughts in the comments section below. And don't forget to hit the like and subscribe buttons for more such recaps. See you in the next video. Until then, take care.